Housekeepers who worked in casinos, hotels. What's the weirdest thing you walked into? I worked as a concierge for an upscale hotel, so naturally, because there wasn't a line for my desk, I fielded complaints regularly. One day a woman, very nice and patient, rare, calmly explained to me that her 5-year-old opened the door to their bathroom and there was a housekeeper pooping in there. The housekeeper and the boy screamed so loudly that I had already gotten noise complaints from the adjacent rooms. Needless to say, that family got a free night and an upgrade. I worked for a hotel chain in Colorado, and one day my co-worker and I went to strip a bed and the bed was full of oranges. The dresser oranges. Side table. Cans of mandarin oranges. Not exactly shocking or disgusting, but it was weird. Oh, I got one. I was a night auditor though. This one starts out benign enough. My night shift starts, and I have a small line. It's Saturday and we're near a couple of casinos. Not unusual. A very polite man checks in and rents a top level suite for him and his wife. I get him in and start checking in the next couple. Being distracted, I barely noticed the previous couple come back in. Only that the wife was partially obscured by the luggage cart, and I remember thinking to myself, that's an ugly woman. The night is quiet and I leave. I come in the next night to hear what unfolded. After I left, the couple never came back down to check out and have not been seen since. When housekeeping entered the room, they immediately alert the FDM. Every surface of the room is covered in lube. The bed, the couch, the jacuzzi, even the mini fridge is covered in bottles and bottle of lube and baby oil. We know for sure it's lube because a dozen bottles are left in the tub. But wait, there's more. In addition to the lube, there is a rather large horse dildo left behind with thick black scuff marks and cracked down the center. My FDM, in her infinite wisdom, decides that they must have been junkies and this dildo is where they are hiding their needles. She decides to pick it up to open it, safety reasons. But when she does, all that falls out is a rather impressive motor that has been burned out. The icing on this cake comes when they review the security tape. The wife is clearly a man in a wig. It's a big burly dude wearing a cheap wig. Not a housekeeper, but I was a bartender at a Marriott hotel years ago, along with regular bartending duties. I also delivered bar orders as part of room service. One night I received a typical order: wine, beer from a room that called down to the bar. I brought the drinks to the room and was greeted by an early 50s man wearing a white robe. He greeted me and asked me to place the drinks on a dresser fairly close to door. As I went to place the drinks down, I noticed the bed had between 10-13 dildos laid out neatly along the foot of the bed. The sizes ranged from normal to horse. They were evenly spaced and all facing towards the headboard. While he was signing, I made my way to the door, and as soon as he handed me the book, I smiled and said, "Thank you. Have a great night." He just smiled, and that was it. 0% acknowledgement on his end. Hotel worker had an American guy come into our hotel, meant to be staying for 3 days. Went into his room and never left the room. In over 2 weeks he kept phoning down to extend his stay. The strange thing was, he had the same routine every day. Around 8 AM, he would order 8 bottles of beer and 20 cigarettes to be sent up to his room. He'd sign the check off to his room for the beers, but had to pay cash for the cigarettes as they came from the hotel shop, which wasn't owned by the hotel, therefore wasn't able to charge to the room. The cigarettes came to around 11, and he would always give us a 20 note and told us to keep the change. Lunchtime rolls around, and again, 8 bottles of beer and 20 cigarettes. Come dinner time, again, another 8 beers, but 40 cigarettes this time, assuming to keep the stock of when the shop closed at night time. This happened every day he was staying with us. No one ever saw him leave the hotel, so assumed he had a stack of 20 notes to pay for his cigarettes. He also instructed housekeeping not to clean his room. When he eventually left, the maid was greeted with hundreds of empty beer bottles. The bin was half full with cigarette ends and ash, and the room was left remarkably clean, albeit smelling awful. We tried to research the guy, but could only find he was part of an American broadcasting company. It was a long time ago and can't remember, so assumed he was over here to lie low. He checked out, paid off his bill, didn't even bother to check the bill, into a taxi, and never to be seen again. I walked in on a couple sleeping on the bathroom floor of a hotel room in the hotel I work for. The bed wasn't a shade and everything was normal with that one exception. I stayed at a hotel that hosted a Magic the Gathering tournament, was visiting Atlantic City. Only realized what it was as I played Magic a decade ago. In the morning as I was leaving, a housekeeper had a room opening and cleaning. He stops me and says, "WTF is this? Is it worth money?" I look in and someone has filled the bathtub nearly to the brim with Land's Commons. We had a hotel room one time and checked in around 3-4ish, can't remember what hotel it was. When we walked in, one of the housekeepers was asleep in the chair. Apparently had taken a rest and checked out for who knows how long. We woke her up when we came in the room. She was very apologetic and took her cart and stuff with her right away. We never said anything to the staff or saw her again. The room was all clean and set up, so nothing to complain about. I worked in a casino where I watched a middle-aged man literally shake a solid turd down his pant leg, sit back down, and continued on his machine. I turned around with backpack vacuum on and went to my lunch break. I didn't get paid enough to pick up stranger shit. Someone I know works housekeeping at a casino. He walked in on a guy smearing shit over the walls with his bare hands. He was pissed that he lost money and thought he was justified to do it. Housekeeping called security. He was charged and banned. This couple made a hasty retreat from a 5-star hotel I was working for. They left an entire brick of cocaine on the bathroom counter. In the late 90s, I had a roommate who managed a hotel in Manhattan. He came home one night and told me they found a 3-foot nitrous tank in one of the rooms. They disposed of it personally. These days they would probably call the bomb squad. This is related, but not exactly the question. When my wife and I were looking at wedding venues, one we went to was a hotel. The event manager wanted to take us up and show us the Honeymoon Suite. She opened the door, and there were 2 old men like 60s 70s, shirtless, drinking vodka in the room. She was so extremely embarrassed and apologetic. She was very sweet too, but you could tell she was so mad at whoever screwed that up for her. We didn't choose the place, wasn't why, but I hadn't thought about that in a while and figured someone else may get a kick out of it. I was a housekeeper at a dive of a hotel in Chico, CA in the late 90s. A week or so before, a local homeless woman had stuck her arm in a tiger's cage, a circus that was traveling through town, and got mauled. That weekend I was cleaning rooms and knocked on the door of a room paid for by a local charity organization. It turned out the guest was in the middle of sexy time. Quickly realizing it wasn't a good time to clean the room, I said I would come back later. To my dismay, the woman opened the door and asked me to join her and her friend. I declined. She then reached out and grabbed me by the arm and tried to drag me in. Her arm was covered in bandages and lacerations. It was the woman who had been tiger mauled. I yanked my arm free and ran away. I'll never forget what her shredded, bandaged hand looked like. Not my story, but a friend was a maid at a cheap hotel in our university town. She has a bunch of gross and weird stories, but the most insane is when she came into work and found a full abandoned meth lab in the bathroom of one of the rooms. Her manager made her clean up a bunch of trash from the different ingredients and scrub chemical stains that must have been left by spills. Apparently the room smelled like a bad science experiment or just normal meth, and the management refused to get any police involved. I imagine they believed it would discourage their regular clientele. I believe she quit very soon after. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.